Hello everyone, welcome to another QuantInsti webinar. And today's webinar is an info session on CSAF, that is the Certificate in Sentiment Analysis and Alternative Data for Finance. We are joined by two of our esteemed faculty members, Professor Prof Mitra, who is the founder and chairman of Opterisk and Unicom Seminars, which is one of the leading training, conference and event firms in the UK. About Professor Mitra. Professor Mitra is an internationally renowned researcher. He's a research scientist in the field of operational research in general and computational optimization and modeling in particular. He has published 5 books and over 150 research articles and was awarded the title of Distinguished Professor by Brunel University, London in 2004. The second speaker of the day is Professor Christina Sayer. She is a professor for statistics and financial mathematics at HTW Berlin, Germany. Professor Christina has worked at the Opterisk system as a quantitative analyst and a senior researcher. She completed her PhD in mathematics at Brunel University, London in 2008. She then worked as a researcher and consultant in the financial mathematics department at Fraunhofer ITWM, Kaiserslautern, Germany. And also, we have two special guests participating in today's webinar, Amit Arora, who is Senior Change Management Advisor from Melbourne, Australia. He's joining right now, and the time is there midnight in the Australia, and thanks, Amit, for joining here. And Abhijit Desai also, who is joining us from Mumbai, India. He is Vice President of Electronic Trading at ICICI Securities. So both of them are CSAF alumni and they will be sharing their experience with us all here. But before we begin, I would quickly like to share with everyone that we'll be conducting a Q&A session also. So please make sure that you are asking all your questions, queries, doubts in the questions panel, and we'll try to answer as many questions as possible. Now, allow me to share the presentation rights with Professor Mitra to start off with the session. I think, Prof, you have already shared your screen, so I'll just mute myself and I guess we can start.
Okay, thank you, Kitish, and thank you for your introduction. I've been in the area of teaching, as you can see, as a professor, almost best part of my life. And I really enjoy it because we get very good interaction. We learn a lot from the students, as much as students learn from us. This whole area of knowledge sharing is very exciting, very satisfying. So today we're going to explain to you this course, as Kritish put it, Certificate in Sentiment Analysis and Alternative Data in Finance, CSAF. It has been developed slowly over the next, in the past 1.5 to 2 years. 3 or 4 group have more, if you like, already graduated. And I'm going to show you what currently is our lecture structure and also the faculty. So in effect, so let me just first of all tell you about the faculty. I'm sure you can see my screen, and I'll come back to the, okay, let me first show you about what we call the foundation lectures. So the set of lectures, which spans over nearly 5 months over the weekends, are broken down in 2 different parts. One group are called foundation lectures, where we present the theory, and the next group are called use case or case study lectures, where the lectures are given by guest lecturers who are in the domain of finance and active professionals or fund managers or CEOs of companies which provide products and services in the domain of finance. And indeed, quite a few of them, actually almost all of them, very high profile, and I'm grateful, we are grateful to them for giving up their time. So back to the foundation lectures. We have, okay, at the very beginning, we give a primer which you can see here. I think it's a bit too small, but you can go to the website and take a look, where we give you some background of what people need to read and learn, basically, to get the most out of the lectures. Then the first module is called Sentiment, What and Whose. So we give certain basic ideas about sentiment. We define things like knowledge, informed traders or noise traders, and make distinction between media sentiment, market sentiment, and individual person sentiment. Then we have discussion about sentiment data and so forth. So there are altogether 9 such modules. And these are delivered by what we call core faculty. That means people who are associated or in employment of a research team. And I could now first go to the faculty list, and at some point I'll ask my colleague Christina to talk about a couple of foundation lectures and the new lectures, 2 foundation lectures we have added this time, called AI and machine learning and quantitative models in market to break market direction and role of alternative data, part 2. But let me just go to the faculty now. So we have people like Professor Enza Messina, a core faculty. She talks about behavioral finance and behavioral attitudes. Now, there's another core faculty, I'm skipping over that in a minute. Myself, I stay in most of the lectures. Then we have core faculty coming in a minute. Ziyan Sadiq. He's a researcher within Optiris. He's done his PhD with us, and he provides she has created some of the lecture notes, and you'll see there are lecture notes for all the foundation lectures, which backs up our presentation there, or our what we teach, if you like. And now you'll see Christina. She's my colleague. She was introduced by Kritish earlier, and she gives certain foundation lectures. So let me we'll come to Christina and to 2 other alumni will be here in a few soon. And let me carry on a bit about the use case or the lecture structure. So if I may go back to the lectures again. So there, as you can see, they're altogether 9. No, that's right. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, there are altogether 9 foundation lectures, and then finally an exam, which will come and discuss it afterwards. But these foundation lectures are delivered by what I just mentioned, called core faculty, and what we do, we give 1 or 2 foundation lectures, and then we ask guest faculty to provide lectures which make use of the concept introduced in those foundation lectures. For instance, grasping finance by Anthony Luciani, who works for MarketSite, or there's this classifying earnings call. He's the CEO of Alexandria Technology, who provide sentiment data, news sentiment data, and microblog sentiment data, and so forth. And they give a use case about how classify earnings call from the companies. Or similarly, natural language processing and machine learning techniques, examples given by Matthew Kampalani. Again, he used to be a CEO of, he's a CEO of his own company, that is Brain, but previously led in Italy, one of the major quant funds. All right, at this point, I want to hand over to Christina, who is going to explain about the lectures she gives for us, and also, I mean, some topics like, Christina, you can ask me, I'll expand on this, like things like models which exploit sentiment analysis, or models which exploit sentiment analysis in two parts. So over to you, Christina. You can start describing these courses a bit more in detail.
Thank you very much. Yeah, welcome to the introduction to CSAF. As Professor Mitra mentioned, we have 9 core modules, and perhaps we can have a look at 2 or 3 in a bit more detail. The first 2 modules will cover basics on sentiment and sentiment data. So you will get an idea how you can use sentiment in financial markets, what sentiment is, who is creating it, who is working with it, and basically what it contains of. So there are various news sources that are followed, and where sentiment data is created from. So we will show you basics on sentiment and what to do with it. When we move further to Module 3 and Module 4, we can explain to you some alternative data as well. So moving ahead or away from the pure news sentiment over to other information that's available and that might be useful for prediction or modeling in the financial market. And as you can see here, we include scheduled and unscheduled financial news, macroeconomic news. We will look into the relevance of alternative data for different case studies. We can have a look at major types of alternative data that might cover satellite data, that might cover text analysis, email data, various sources that you might come across, which can be quantified and utilized in financial modeling. Having covered in Module 1 to 4 all these different data types and sets and how useful they can be, we move on to modeling basics and modeling frameworks. We explain some descriptive, normative, prescriptive, and decisions models, and discuss with you the differences between those and also their use. When is which model helpful? What model can be used for predictions or for descriptions or for any problems at hand? Obviously, we will concentrate on the domain of finance, so we will explain all these different types of models in that domain. In the second part of the models to exploit sentiment analysis, we have a few more specific applications, financial applications of these sentiment data and their properties. These applications cover risk management as well as portfolio optimization. We will explain how different time frames are there and need to be included into your model decisions, how fund rebalancing is enhanced through sentiment data, how automated trading can be improved through the use of sentiment data, and also a bit on retail applications. Opinion and biases then covers a bit on behavioral finance, and then we move on to AI, machine learning, and quantitative models. That goes then a bit more into mathematical details as well, and you will get the tools to really work with the sentiment data, to include that in prediction models. Now we cover here, as you can see, basics on supervised and unsupervised learning models, models for predicting market directions, decision tree model, neural networks, all of which are covered from basic point of view, so that you can all join in and learn the quantitative details on that. Module 9 then includes a bit of alternative data and concentrates on the role of alternative data, so how that can also be included in optimization and decision modeling. These are basically the core modules, which are, as Professor Mitra mentioned, always intertwined with some case studies from leading industrial experts.
Okay, thanks, Christina. Let me just ask our two alumni, any comments they want to make or relate to their experiences. So may I ask Amit to come in? Hi, Amit.
Hello, Professor Mitra and Professor Christina. Happy to be here and to share my experience with you all. I did the second batch of the previous version of this course, which was called EPAT NSA, EPAT NSA 2. And when I joined that course, I was actually heading a small consulting firm in Australia that provided organization change consulting to clients here in Australia. And I was doing as more of an interest rather than as something that would help me with my work. But somewhere I wanted to use the learnings towards successful, profitable trade, developing profitable trading strategies. When I joined the course, I did not expect a lot from it. Because trading is a challenging field, and I had never worked in that field, so my expectations were low. But the learnings did really help me come up with some original ideas that I was working on towards the end of the course. The course provided a strong orientation for practical work, and that helped me develop my own ideas to some extent during the course itself. And after the course, I kind of moved away from active change management consulting and devoted more time to developing my own ideas. And over the last 3 months, I've kind of moved completely away from active change consulting with clients, and I'm spending most of my time on trading, on actual trading. Some of the ideas that I was still developing during the course have actually borne fruit, and over the last 3 months, the results that I've got are much better than I had ever expected. Now that doesn't mean 3 months is a very short period of time to say that I've arrived. I certainly can't say that. I'm certainly not suggesting that, but it has given me a good start into a foray into a field that I never expected I would really be spending my time on, and I'm pretty happy about it. I hope to spend more time, doing some active trading over the next few years for sure. I think the course was phenomenal. It was awesome. As part of sharing my experience, what I would tell future candidates would be, the commitment and the dedication that you bring to the course, that decides what you take away from it. So you're sitting in front of a fire, think of it that way. Your commitment, your dedication, the questions you bring, the curiosity you bring to the course, that's what adds fuel to that fire. So if you bring that in, you will certainly get the warmth out of it. Does that make sense?
Thank you very much, Amit. Thank you for your commitment, and I hope continue to be successful. Abhijit, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, Professor. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak today. It's great pleasure for me to speak, be on the panelist with you. So I'm Abhijit Desai. I'm working with ICICI Securities on the electronic platform, the electronic desk. And to talk about this course, basically I completed my EPAT 2 years back, and afterwards the QuantInsti team reached out for the EPAT NSA, what Amit rightly said. And I was looking forward for something which is more challenging in terms of the algorithm trading. I heard a lot about how the sentiment data or how things are when it comes down to news. Okay, I have a complete access to Bloomberg or to the other part of the news data, like usually during the trading hour. But many a times, what happens is it's very difficult to distinguish what news is actually useful, what news is to be shared, and what news is actually going to make you some money. To be very frank, it's currently we are swimming in I would not even say ocean of data, but that's like huge data what we have, and it's very difficult to analyze which is the correct one to be used. With the help of this course, it helped me out, not just analyze, but helped me out to explain to my clients why XYZ news about a certain company, how is it useful, or how am I using it on my own trading platforms. Okay, I don't come from a very technical background as such. So for me, coding or learning was very difficult initially. But again, EPAT and right now NFP helped me out so much to understand Python as a program, to work on it, to develop my own models, which was a really great help. So once again, I would say thank you so much to everyone.
Okay, thank you very much, Abhijit. So I think Kitish, you take over for the Q&A part. We take the questions from the floor, people attending, and Kitish.
Sure, Prof. So thank you so much for taking us through and giving a very good understanding and overview of the program, and also to Amit and Abhijit for sharing their experience with the entire audience. So now I would like to ask everyone, like all of those who have questions related to this program or anything specific to sentiment analysis or alternative data in the trading or financial world, you can feel free to ask those questions. So you have this questions panel right there. So feel free to put those questions. I can already see there are many questions that are already there. But before we pick, I would also like to share one thing, that this webinar is going to be recorded and will be shared with all of those who are attending it right now, and also people who have registered but could not join us here today. So this recording will be shared with all of them over email. And yeah, so please put in those questions. And this, okay, now
can you read
I
out
can
the
see a few
questions, Kitish?
Yeah.
Yes. Can you read out the questions? I can't quite.
Sure.
The chat, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I just read out. So this question by Dheeraj Kumar. Dheeraj asks, CSAF course can cover course. I'm not sure what he means by that. So we'll move to the next one. That is by Mark Smiths. He asks, what language will be used for machine learning? So, Prof, would you like to read this question?
I can do and then pass it on to Christina. Actually, it's quite interesting. Machine learning itself nowadays is a question like what they call connecting things together, basket weaving. You first of all get a model, like as Christina pointed out, like random forest or some graph-based models or artificial neural nets. Now, frankly, having done the model, you realize it not by programming from ground up, but you use packages. So by and large, we use Python packages. Although some people can and do use R packages, but for industrials and application, you do need Python packages. Christina, can you add to that?
Yes, this is correct. So most of the implementations for the machine learning modules is done in Python. Statistical applications, statistics, we often do in R as well. So sometimes we have them intertwined, do a bit in R, a bit in Python. and that works quite well. Both
Okay.
languages are common in industry, and Python is the most used language at the moment for these machine learning applications, I'd say.
I hope that answers your question, Mark. Thanks, Christina. Thanks, Professor Mitra. So, all right, the next one is, I think this question is basic one. What is primer?
The primer is, if I may go up and do, is just a subject areas, the topics that important. God, let me just take this. Here. So if you have opened the website, you can see it here. It's really the things you need in the background to do A, trading, and B, applying sentiment analysis, alternative data to trading. So some background information we required, like autoregressive Gaussian and other models for prediction, or how you do performance measurement, like Aki information criteria, mean absolute error, and so forth. And that's a primer in the sense that if people have different backgrounds, they kind of have to read up on that. So, or they're given some information and they do it. Does that answer the question? It's quite
Yes,
broad.
it does. So I hope, Pranav, your question is answered. So this next one is by Arthur Berrios. He asks, what is the duration of each module, including the primer?
The primer itself has no time because it's given to you before the course starts. Now, each module, in terms of presentation, is a Saturday's lecture. Now, we reserve about 3 hours normally, 8:30 to IST Indian time to, 8 o'clock Indian time in the evening to 9, 10, 11. But usually between 2 and 3. And so that is the duration in terms of delivery. But they're also backed up by lecture notes. All the foundation lectures are backed up by lecture notes about between 12 to 14 pages that allows to prepare for it. And whereas the use case lectures, which you'll see here, are of variable duration. They at least between, I don't know, about 1 hour to 1.5 to 2 hours, with breaks after every 30 minutes for Q&A with the guest faculty. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I hope it does. Arthur, I hope it does answers your question. The next one is by Amit Bansal. He asks, is sentiment analysis really required, or we can do trading without it?
Oh, that's a good question. No, that's very good. Well, the thing is, people always did. And indeed, efficient market hypothesis says after market digests all the sentiment, all the news, ultimately it does. But in trading, you somehow trying to find a gain or advantage, or they call it finding sources of alpha. So sometimes between the time the news or news sentiment therefore arrives and the actual market moves fully from that particular news item, like macroeconomic announcement, etc. There is a scope of finding ways through trading of making some, if you like, return on money. I don't know if it makes sense or not.
Okay, I hope that answers your question,
Yeah.
Amit.
I mean, there used to be trading. Actually, but I should really pass it on to my colleagues in a minute. There used to be trading before sentiment became something. Indeed, the rise of the whole concept of sentiment, news analysis, sentiment analysis, started taking place from 2005 onwards. Before that, people happily did trading without, taking much into account news, etc., but only mentally, but not formally and via models. Okay, let me pass on to Christina on this. She does amount of activities on this. Christina, what do you think?
Yes, well, of course you can do trading without sentiment, but the question is if you really want to. Sentiment analysis contains a lot of information on the market, on current market activities. And now, as Professor Mitra pointed out, not just now with the sentiment analysis we have in hand, also before that information was used for trading decisions. But now we get tools to use it in a quantitative way that might be a bit quicker than reading news yourself, but letting a machine help you analyze news items that come out. And so I guess your trading can benefit from that sentiment and the quantitative sentiment analysis that we do.
Very good, thank you.
Just to add on to that, like, say, as you rightly said, like, okay, in 2005, we never had so much of a data available out over there. Right now, you have the Twitters and the many things of the world where the data is huge, and it's very difficult to analyze this, how it is going to impact your investment decision. So it's always helpful to have the sentiment analysis on hand.
Very good point, Amit. Yeah.
So I think we got 3 answers for the same question, so that definitely helps a lot. Moving to the next one, and that next question is by Hatinder Jeet. So Hatinder asks, what kind of data we will work with?
Okay, I'll take this first. And now, as I mentioned about the practical session, you will be given data. Actually, getting sentiment or news data, it might seem simple, but you can buy and get it, or individual don't have, the provider don't necessarily immediately sell it. But we have right to, there's something connected with that, this whole question of right to use. Like Dow Jones provides news, if you like, wares, and then Alexandria Technology or Ravenback processes them, turns into sentiment, gives to you. So when you want to use it, you need to have permission all the way. So there is a lot of, contractual or other things involved. Now, what in this particular course we're able to do, we can extract, or we can, from our source of sentiment data, with the permission of the providers, you can share some of it. And we have a list from different suppliers like Market Size, who is to be with Thomson Reuters, who are Thomson Reuters, or now Refinitiv's sentiment arm, and also from Alexandria or like the Ravenback, as I mentioned them, and we're able to share it with you for your particular practical investigation. Does that make sense?
Yes, I hope that answers your question, Hatinder. The next one is by Pinaki Bhattacharya. So Pinaki asks, this is a very general question. What kind of data sources are generally used for sentiment analysis? Do you employ Vader plots for sentiment analysis?
Do you employ what? Vader plots?
Vader plots.
Oh, Vader.
Not Vader, V-A-D-E-R, Vader.
Vader plots. Okay, got it. Let me pass on to, I'll come back last, to Christina.
Yeah, so I think the question was on data sources for sentiment analysis. There are a lot of sources you can follow. So the most general source would be news outlets for different languages, different countries. This is something that typically the analyst is, let's say, has a specialty in one or the other language. So he would choose the language that he wants to follow. And then there is sentiment analysis on news, but also on social media outlets like Twitter news. There we have some other problems and other characteristics of the text data that we follow. So there's some irony that has to be taken into account, some emojis flying around which need to be analyzed. So this is a bit of a different approach then. In general, I think Vader is part of that NFL part, so natural language processing, where you take different lexica and try to put the words into positive or negative emotions. So this is definitely something, this is what is done with our Python packages, or not with our Python packages, but with Python packages we use. But in general, as Professor Mitra pointed out, we also have sentiment data available where already the sentiment has been calculated. So the textual analysis has been done, and the sentiment providers give us their view on positive, negative, or neutral news or social media interactions. And those can then be included in a quantitative way to portfolio optimization or asset allocation decisions.
Yes, very good. I wanted to point out that some of the major players like Bloomberg, they have all of that. You know, you get Bloomberg terminal, they try to own you, if you like. And indeed, you know, people, do serious trading or even individual trading use Bloomberg terminals. But similarly, you get from Refinitiv, which is a big player. So they will provide those data. And this course, although we give some introduction to NLP, parts of it, but we avoid or stop from telling the, if you like, students and dissuade people from doing use of natural language processing and then get sentiment, because then the problem at hand gets changes. Our interest is in using the sentiment for trading, but not to find from information the type of sentiment. Anyway, that's my take on it. Maybe individual.
Sure. Thanks, Professor Mitra and Professor Christina. All right, so this next question is specific to career. Now, so this question is by Sonam Thakur. Sonam asked, as I'm pursuing my master degree in M Pharma as data scientist, is a new upcoming department or most important topic. So what is the easiest way that I have to practice to learn it well? As a data analyst or AI or data analyst? So let me.
Go ahead.
Do you want me to repeat that question, Professor?
Yeah, I think the question is for a master student who wishes to know what career path to follow. Whether become an expert in data analysis, or I'm not sure what else, or know more about AI. Is that the question?
Yes. As a data analyst or AI?
Yeah. Okay. My answer is none. I tell you why. Because it is highly focused. I mean, for instance, you can use data and data analysis on some kind of classification, big data and alternative data in different problem domains. People apply it in a big way in domain of consumers and consumer behavior. But here we are more interested in how we can exploit it in finance and in financial markets. So one of the most important concept that goes in, or rather requirement that goes hand in hand, is that of understanding the financial markets. So it's a question of understanding the financial markets and then getting the knowledge about models, AI models as well as quant models, by which you can make connection of the knowledge to the financial markets. And knowledge of the financial market is paramount. Okay. We also explain that. Does that answer his question? You can all write to us by email afterwards if you want. clarification.
Yes, definitely. So yeah, I want to highlight that point as well. So I'm getting tons and tons of questions. In fact, I'm missing out on a lot of questions on YouTube as well. So in case your question is not answered, please make sure that you share that question at the end of this webinar through the survey that you are going to receive. Okay. But yeah, moving on to the next question, and this question is by Ophir. Now, Ophir asks, I'm interested to combine news sentiments and volatility trading. Do you cover this area in the course?
That's a question. These are research questions. I'm not sure what exactly it means by volatility trading. If it means VIX trading or a swap, called some swaps, I'll come to this in a minute, then no, we don't quite do it directly. Although it explains some of this. And indeed, trading in volatility in VIX index and or this equivalent in other markets is an important topic, but they are in the domain of cutting-edge research. So we'll give you instruments and methods for doing it, but we don't quite do it in this particular course. You'll be well equipped to do that. Christina, can I hand over to you? Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that. So we don't have a specific lecture on volatility trading, but since there are hands-on sessions as well and sessions where you create your own projects, you can certainly take that as one of your favorite topics and see how you can apply methods and models that we introduce to volatility trading with sentiment. It's certainly a quite interesting topic which you can explore more in the course.
Yeah, exactly right. It's coming. What I had in mind was in volatility trading, you could either do variance swaps or you can, as Christina pointed out, trade in volatility, but with adding to it the sentiment. Indeed, for both of the variance swaps, volatility trading, you can begin that sentiment. Okay.
Thank you. I hope that answers your question. So the next question is very interesting, and it's again by Arthur Barrios. So he asks, the program mentions data related to sentiment analysis, but it also refers to alternative data. What do you mean by alternative data?
Oh, well, alternative data is a new growth area. Indeed, in a market, now we talk about market participants. So people who trade or do analysis of companies, etc., they're the main market participants. But right now, there is what we call, it has emerged from the beginning of this millennium, called tertiary market participants who provide data and additional data like the sentiment data, news data, or other data items which affect the market. Now, I'm working towards the answer to that question. Now, typically, and it's in the last few years, it has become important that you use satellite data or use data that is data which is using that you can see how many cars there are standing in the supermarket parking lot and so forth. And that is used in terms of the data. Also, there are some other very interesting interesting topics like your inbox, meaning email inbox, can be anonymized and are anonymized and can be sold. People are buying that. Sorry, I have to. And so what happens? You can get details of whole orders from Amazon or a pizza supplier, and this can be then sold and people analyze it to find out how a particular company is doing or what the trend is. So these items are alternative data. They were not data items specially created for the market, but having had access to it, you can use it in an alternative way. And it's a kind of it's a subject area that's emerged only recently. And what's more, these are often come through brokers. They're companies which broke alternative data and provide you from different sources. I don't know if it answered the question. But oh yes, we are doing a handbook on alternative data, and it will be ready. Where first volume is coming up soon. Actually, our company Optrisk has got a partnership with Taylor Francis and Informa Group, and we have a publication program called Taylor Francis Informa and Optrisk Publications in Finance, like Bloomberg's publications in with John Wiley, and we publish when the first volume on that will be the alternative data handbook. There, okay, there'll be other ones like quantum computing in finance and so forth. All right, so that's the answer, and that's far as I could give.
Thank you for such detailed explanation. I think, yeah, it's fascinating to see this something that is coming up in the form of alternative data and what can be covered within that umbrella of alternative data. Amazing. Okay, so now this again, it's a very long question and a very interesting one, and it's on certification versus no certification learning. And this question is by Surya Andreas Manalu from Indonesia. So he says basically, hi, I am from Indonesia. I want to share my experience. How important is certification in investing today? Because now there are many educational social media about investing and trading. Moreover, in Indonesia, there is a lot of education from Instagram. So it's pretty easy to understand investing. So many people in Indonesia think there is no need for certification, financial and investment. So what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. Let Amit and Abhijit answer this first, and then I could add something because they have done the certification. What do you think?
I think learning happens from all sources. So there's no doubt what you gather from Instagram, YouTube, and all other sources helps with your learning. But there is always a place for structured learning, which Instagram and YouTube cannot satisfy. I think structured learning is important. It helps you develop a perspective and an approach that unstructured learning does not provide. So I would say both have a place of its own, and without structured you can still do without unstructured learning, but without structured learning, really going some distance is not that easy.
Yeah, I would say that certificate for the sake of it is of no importance. I mean, there is a thing that certain trading companies and others, when you say we have done this, would take that into account, but not fully rely on the fact that you have a certificate in this. But as Amit pointed out, the going through such a course equips you to do that type of investigation or research in the practical term you want to do. Okay, actually, Kitish, I don't know when you'll bring this to the conclusion, because we have now gone on how long? 1 hour.
We still have 10 minutes left, Prof. So we can answer a few questions.
Okay.
In fact, I have a list of questions I have shortlisted.
Yeah. So okay, no problem. Okay. Yeah.
All right. So now the next one. Okay. So I hope Surya Andreas Manalu that answers your question. In fact, we have got so many registrations for this session from Indonesia. So I hope other people participating from Indonesia also have got some insight from the comments shared by Amit and Professor Mitra. So this next question is by Rukkam Sai Kumar. So Rukkam asks, what is the importance of daily political news or any news to be followed? If not, what trading goes well with only technical knowledge?
Again, okay, let me try first, and then I like my colleagues to answer. Christina can mention. Okay, technical knowledge, meaning technical analysis in trading, is well known and people can do it. And in many technical analysis, some kind of effect of news is also taken into account, like momentum strategy or relative strength, etc. But I think it's a bit like peeling an onion. You go more and more into the depth of it, and you take that knowledge, and therefore, when it comes to applying it, you can apply the sort of informed judgment on this. So now it's a question of news, as what you mentioned. There is this concept of informed and noise traders. A noise trader is a person who gets a news item and you get immediately excited by it and buys on sales particular stocks or shares. While an informed trader, what they do, they take news items and other, he puts through his mental analysis. Actually, informed trader as defined is their knowledge of the market and analyze it, and then uses his or her discretion to make a trade. So that is the difference. That and it's of course in this approach is automated. So that's my answer. Christina, and also maybe Abhijit, you can come in. Christina first.
Well, I guess it adds a bit up to what I was saying before. So of course you have technical trading strategies that you can run on its own, and you can also not be sure that including sentiment will improve the performance always. Nevertheless, it's always helpful to include as much knowledge or as much information in your trades as you have available. Doesn't mean you have to follow all news outlets, and doesn't mean you have to include all of the social media trends that are around. But certainly also in technical analysis, you do capture movements of the market which are closely related to news. So I find it a bit hard to distinguish here really between the technical analysis trading and the sentiment trading. I think most of the time you would try to combine different models and try to combine the information you have available to make informed decisions in the end.
Yeah, I mean, that explains it pretty well.
I would just say, like, okay, I've got nearly 17 years of experience in trading right now, and if I could say that I have been using technical analysis to a large extent. Okay, and also to some extent, like the new sentiments right now. To be very frank, all these things are so useful, especially when you combine everything together. Okay, makes much more sense than just using one technical or one fundamental analysis to a large extent.
Yeah, thanks, Abhijit. Yeah. Okay.
All right, so I hope that answers your question, Rokam. Now, this next question is very interesting one, and Bipin Devnath asks, in the beginning, I heard about individual sentiment. So, is it about Elon Musk-like personalities or general trader individually?
Both. So typically in social media sentiment, you will have a few person that you follow, or the sentiment provider has a pool of people that might be relevant for the market. So Elon Musk might certainly be one of those, but you will also have sentiment coming from general news sources or news outlets where you don't just follow particular people. For social media sentiment, it's often quite useful to filter out a bit people you follow, so that they might be financial market professionals that tweet about their trades or tweet about their information they might have, because those information is easier to translate into a sentiment that is useful for financial decisions. It's not just about Elon Musk's, but you will certainly also follow him.
Thanks, Christina. I hope that answers your question, Bipan. This next question is is by Ofer again. So he asks, do you cover how to get real-time notification on news and press releases?
Sorry, you get real-time notification of
news slash press releases.
News slash
press releases.
Oh, press releases. Yes. Yeah, I mean, again, the information providers do supply it very quickly. Like if you take into account like a purchase manager's view of the market, which is announced every month, or other macroeconomic announcements, then the speed with which it's communicated is important. I mean, so is any, that's a calendar news. Uncalendar news means unscheduled news when it comes in. But if you are doing automated trading, which is our objective is, or what's known as systematic trading, that's applying quant models and AI models to carry on in a actual live trading. And by the way, the working up to that is quite challenging because you have to have back test for sure. But that's only the beginning, not the end. But then you have virtual trade, which is also different from actual live trading. Now there, the arrival of news, yes, you need it on the spot, but it cannot just dominate your strategy, if you like. So yeah, I mean, again, since one relies on a provider of news, you could also, depending on the market you're working on, separately process news from that particular index, like FTSE in the London Stock Exchange, etc. But yes, it would be useful, important to have news as it is announced. That's my take. Christina, what do you think?
On that, so time might be important, and news certainly affects returns quite quickly. So a timestamp is relevant for the sentiment analysis. And sometimes we differentiate between the scheduled and unscheduled news. But yeah, I guess that's what you already mentioned as well.
Thank you, Professor Christina and Professor Mitra. So we are around at the end, so we'll just ask two more questions. We'll just pick two more questions. And so this one is by Mohammed Hussain. So Mohammed asks, is the course more focused on the academic aspect of training models and extracting data, or on the practical aspects of trading and developing trading strategies based on the sentiment?
Well, it's definitely a practical one because as you can see, we are getting so many use cases just to illustrate the thoughts. Even the foundation lectures are very much application oriented. But having said that, the foundation of theory is very important, because without that, as maybe Amit pointed out earlier and others, that if you don't have a structured way of representing information or knowledge, or what are, as we do in a textbook, we collect knowledge so far and present it in a very well organized way, it's important. So, but the answer to that question is, no, it's not academic, it's very much practical, but we do not ignore the academic underpinning of it. Okay. Christina, what do you
Thanks.
say?
If I may
Yeah,
add,
absolutely. I think the quantitative frameworks are very important, so we need to understand the models, but then we certainly can apply those and use interesting case studies and use cases to highlight the use of the sentiment data.
Yeah. Amit had something to say. Go on, Amit.
Yeah, what I was saying, Professor, was that in trading there is not a lot of distance between academics and practicality. So in other fields that might be the case, uh, but in trading that's not the case. You can, if you have the academic rigor to apply to your ideas, you can certainly apply that to trading.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much, Amit. All right, so I hope that answers your question, Mohammed. And a last question. Okay, this last question, I think there are still so many questions I have shortlisted but could not pick due to limited time. This is the last question by Fani Krishna Pamarthi. So I'm going to ask this question, and it is about parts of the course like AI, ML, and Python are covered in EPAT. How will this course benefit for someone who has already done EPAT or already doing EPAT? I think this would be a perfect question for Amit and Abhijit. But yeah, Professor, you would like to take it up?
Well, I think as you rightly pointed out, the users who have taken the course, they could answer it a bit better than us. But my take on, because they have done EPAT, the thing about EPAT is and actually I'm an advisor to that at the very early days, and they are, of course, it is of course set up for telling people how to do trading and algorithm trading. The sentiment aspect and alternative data aspect are because it's separated. That's why together with QuantInsti we designed this course and we're developing it and we're learning from this. So of course AI and machine learning is required in trading per se and straight away. But here the additional knowledge we bring to the table, the course brings to the table by with the use cases of people who also use AI and machine learning to their application or case studies, and also the foundations we provide. And that's what is different from our perspective. But let's hear from the two persons who have the experience, Amit and Abhijit. Amit didn't have Abhijit, yeah. Abhijit. Hello.
Yes, Professor. So basically, I would say I would put it in this way: like, okay, it's after the bachelor's degree, it's kind of a master's course. So it's as simple like, okay, you have learned because for somebody like me, okay, who doesn't come from a technical background and for whom programming was in Spanish language completely, I had no knowledge about programming. So I learned from EPAD the programming skills or the Python skills, and after that, how do I utilize in my trading platform? Okay, how do I analyze the trading sentiments? How do I make it much better in the coming days and use the data? So that's what NSA taught me.
Okay. All right. I think
Amit, over to you. Yeah.
Amit, okay.
Sure. So when I did my EPAT, I was still working on some ideas, but those were far from being profitable. My experience with NSA was that after NSA, I could take those ideas to, tradable ideas. I could really work with ideas that could be profitable after NSA. NSA gave me the groundwork that was needed to kind of take those initial ideas to fruition. That's my experience.
Very
Wonderful,
good.
wonderful. Thank you so much, Amit, and thank you so much, Abhijit, for answering this question. So I think, yeah, that's about it. I think we still are getting a lot of questions, and I did not pick a single question from YouTube and Facebook because there were so many already here on GoToWebinar. But be rest assured, we'll make sure that all the questions will be answered. Our team will get in touch with all of you whose questions were not answered. And in case if you have more questions, please ask those questions in the survey that you are going to get right after this. With that said, I would like to thank you so much to Professor Mitra, Professor Christina, Amit, Abhijit for taking out your valuable time and conducting such a wonderful info session on CSAF. And I'm sure our audience now has very good understanding of the CSAF program. And as I said, I mean, we would love to answer all your doubts and questions. Please share them in the survey. And thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. And I'll catch you in the next one. Till then, stay safe, take care, and have a wonderful day ahead.
Okay, thank you, Kritish, and thanks everybody else who made this webinar possible. We, as faculty, always enjoy discussion and sharing knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
Abhijit and Amit and Abhijit. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, please take care. Have a good day. Thank you.